Good morning, everybody. Well, I'm on vacation and I must really be bored because I decided to. I was just sitting here doing some internet searches and I came across one. I decided to do one of Laura Ingalls Wilder. For those of you who've ever watched Little House on the Prairie. And as I was researching Laura Ingalls Wilder, I found out that actually the show is not a whole lot like Laura Ingalls' life. So I'm wondering, were the television shows, I guess the television shows were based on her books. I've not read any of her books. I'm not that bored. But I remember I watched Little House while my kids were very little, and my daughter loved Laura Ingalls. And she always wanted to pretend that she was Laura Ingalls. So, and then after that, every baby doll she ever had, she named Mary. Anyway, back to the prairie. Uh, as many of you know, Little House on the Prairie still comes on today. It comes on the Hallmark Channel every evening, several episodes. And sometimes while I'm sitting here online right before I go to bed, I'll put it over there and watch an episode or so. So what prompted me to look up Laura Ingalls was that on last night's episode, this elderly lady died and had left Laura and Almanzo her big house. She said she didn't want it tore down, and their only son had passed away years ago, and she wanted Laura to take care of the home. So Laura and Almanzo turned that home into a boarding house. And so I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. And, of course, they had baby Rose, and Laura's son had died the other night in the episode. And so I thought, well, let me look it up and see if she ever had any more children. So actually, the show is not a whole lot like their life at all. I believe on the show, Laura was like 16 or 17 when her and Almanzo got married. In reality, she was 18. Laura did have a son that died. On the show, Caroline Ingalls had a son to die too, and in reality, she did have a son to die. But on the show, he was only a few days old, and in reality, he was almost a year old. Laura and Almanzo never had a boarding house, as depicted on the show. One thing I found very interesting, on the show, Mary went blind and went off to a blind school and then met Adam Kendall, who became her husband. And Mary and Adam taught at the blind school together. She had a miscarriage with her first baby. She went on to become pregnant again and had a little boy. And her and Adam's little boy died in a house fire when the blind school was struck by lightning. And the baby died in the house fire along with Alice Garvey. And I remember that episode, and that was one of the saddest episodes. In reality, none of that ever happened. None. Mary was never married, much less pregnant, for back in those days. Mary, there was no Adam. So this whole thing about Adam and Mary and the blind school and the babies and the miscarriages, all it's just made up. All it's fiction. Mary never married. Back in those days, there was no freedom of sex, if you will. So Mary probably died as a virgin. Mary lived with her parents until their death, and then I think Mary lived with Grace, I believe. I think she lived with Grace until she died. However, she died at Carrie's house. But the most interesting thing of all, perhaps, is that Pa Ingalls, if you will, was 66 when he died. He died of heart disease, and back then that was the average life expectancy for a man. But Pa Ingalls died of heart disease at age 66, and that was the last time that Laura Ingalls Wilder ever saw her mother, was at Pa's funeral. Ma Ingalls was in her 80s when she passed. So she died like 20 some years after Mr. Ingalls died. And during this time, Laura Ingalls never saw her mother in the last 20 years of her mother's life and did not attend her mother's funeral. So I found that very, very bizarre as well. It just goes to show that television and books and reality are always different. I've never read, like I said, I've never read the books, so I don't know in the books whether Mary ever married in the books or not. But certainly you wouldn't think that she had married in the books, because those were the biographies by Laura Ingalls Wilder. So I'm sure television, takes it a step further and adds their own things in there, just to stay on the air and to make it more entertaining for us. And so, but it's weird though, because all these years after seeing Little House, and I actually believe that everything that happened was true. Foolish me. Anyway, until next time, bye-bye.